4, 3, 2, 1. KenCast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special KenCast. I'm very honored to be with you today, talking about what has become a holiday classic, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And we're going to do a deep dive. We're going to get into this movie and talk about all the reasons why it has held up over all of these years. And I thought it would be very interesting today to have two different viewpoints on this. The first viewpoint is from someone who is a lifelong fan of this movie. He's a filmmaker. You've seen him on KenCast before, and he has a lot of movie wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, let me present David Srock. Dave, how are you?
Yes, I'm here to give you all my movie wisdom at full effect.
That's great. That's great. And Drew Rohaly. Drew, you are joining us today. Obviously, alumnus of the Last Row podcast. You know all things movies, especially from the 80s. This is your bread and butter. However, you had not seen this movie at all until recently.
This one somehow escaped me, and I don't know why. I really don't know how or why, but this one escaped me, and I got to tell you, like, I have a lot of thoughts on it, and we'll get into it, but I think it'll be cool to see the different perspectives as like a new time watcher versus somebody who's seen it before many times. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And so, Drew, let me start with you. So you haven't seen it until now. Why do you feel like you're just getting around to it now and like you hadn't seen it when you were, say, 13 or 20 or anything like that?
It's an interesting question because I guess you could. It was on TV quite a bit, but I just never watched it. And I like John Candy. I like Steve Martin. I like all of the people in the movie. But for some reason, it just never was like a staple of my house. Like the holiday movies for my house were like Home Alone, Jingle All the Way, like more of the Christmas movie. And we could talk about whether Thanksgiving or Christmas is the staple of this. Obviously, it's Thanksgiving, but for some reason, it just escaped me. I don't know why. We didn't have a copy of it on VHS. It was on TV various times, but I never really watched it much. So I don't know why. I'm not sure, but I'm glad I saw it now. I'll tell you that.
That's great. And Dave, with the amazing Miyagi Santa hat. Great. That's amazing. Why do you think this movie is so, well, tell us about how you first came upon seeing this movie and how has it become so important to you?
Sure. This movie was definitely given to me by my parents as they were watching it every year on Thanksgiving. So it was kind of beaten into my head from a very young age that this is the funniest movie. This is John Candy's best thing. This is Steve Martin. Like it was just explained to me in that way. So I only understood that since I was like 4, basically. And as the years went on, it just became that movie to always put on at Thanksgiving. But as I got older, my parents got divorced, and it started to become a thing that I just watched every weekend with my dad when I was visiting him. It was just like Sunday morning, kind of lazy, just hanging out, just throw on Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Let it go. It's not Thanksgiving, it's July, but who cares? So pretty much from that moment on, it's just been that movie for my family and especially with my father. So it really just became the comfort film of my life, pretty much.
Wow. And I want to share with people, I've been over to Dave's place and on the wall, he has something hanging on the wall. I want to share that with you guys.
That's awesome.
There it is.
Isn't that cool? And
I'm looking at that in person right now, so that's weird for me.
What it's now tell us about this and why that's kind of on your wall and why it's so special.
Sure. I wanted to get some image from the movie to hang up, and my 2 favorite images from the movie are this shot, which I think is the best image of them, but my other favorite one is actually when they're sitting at the Braidwood Inn and they're both sitting on the trunk outside of the hotel waiting to get picked up. There's a wide shot of them just sitting on the trunk looking cold. So I just chose this one, I guess, because it's maybe the more iconic moment.
Yeah, a great shot, amazing. And it's like you walk in and you see that on the wall, Dave. I got to be honest, it's just it warms your heart. It makes you feel like, ah, yes, it's very comforting to have that image on the wall.
It's going home.
Exactly. Yes, it's going home. Uh, I would like to share a question with everyone watching the live chat right now, but also if you're watching on the replay, let us know in the comments if you have an answer to this question. What is the worst travel disaster you've personally experienced? So we'd be interested to hear about your travel disaster if you've had one that's similar to planes, trains, and automobiles. Um, just straight off, do you guys have travel disasters that are somehow in the league of planes, trains, and automobiles? Drew?
I don't travel very often, to be completely honest with you. So I've been actually pretty lucky. I think the worst situation I've ever had was I'll say I was a kid and we were flying west. So I live on the East Coast and we were flying to the West Coast. And it was the first time I was ever on a plane. And it was, I think our connecting flight was in Detroit. And we were on the basically tarmac in Detroit. And it was a crazy thunderstorm. And they decided to take off anyway. So I would say that that was one of the more terrifying flights of my life. But getting stuck, I have actually had some pretty good luck with not getting like having any of the situations that these guys had in this movie. So I'm gonna knock on wood here because I just want to hope that it stays that way.
Yes. Dave, have you had any travel disasters?
I'm going to knock on wood as well and say nothing at this level. And if I did, they were probably work related. So I can't even say it was the travel necessarily.
Right. The only thing I've had that sort of comes close is we were on an airplane. My wife and I were on an airplane trying to go someplace. It was storming outside, and they kept us because there was lightning around. They kept us waiting on the tarmac for, gosh, it must have been like 3 or 4 hours. And there was a young, kind of a kid, sort of a young adult with his family, but he just couldn't get off. Like he was just kept going on and saying, we have to leave now. We should get out of here. We should leave and get in a car and drive home. You know, it's like he was like just kept on going and going. And they decided to leave. When they left, everyone was like clapping because he was just so loud. That's the closest thing. But well, you know, since we're talking about travel in the holidays, it's almost Christmas. The movie takes place in the run up to Thanksgiving. Do you think it's fair, Drew, that could this be a general holiday movie, or is this really a Thanksgiving movie?
I would say people probably look at it as a general holiday movie, but as somebody who hadn't seen it much, like I liked that they were explicit about we're going home for Thanksgiving. And I think as somebody whose birthday falls around Thanksgiving, you know, I feel like there's a war on Thanksgiving these days. You know, Thanksgiving's an underappreciated holiday, and I feel like people go straight to Christmas from Halloween. So for me, I really like Thanksgiving. It's a great holiday where, you know, family and friends get together. And I liked that Steve Martin was trying to go home to be with his family for Thanksgiving. And I think there's plenty of Christmas movies, and not taking anything away from any of those. But I actually like to look at it as a Thanksgiving movie, as somebody who you know has not seen it very much. But I think you could look at it as a general holiday movie because, you know, they didn't have like too much specific Thanksgiving things. Like they didn't make a whole big deal out of like carving the turkey or whatever, right? Like it was more about being together with family. So I like to look at it as a Thanksgiving movie just because I feel like there's not enough of those, and I want it to be Thanksgiving. So I don't know what you guys think.
Dave?
I think it is not only a Thanksgiving movie, it is the Thanksgiving
Yeah.
movie. So that's why it has to stay in that category. I don't think anything Thanksgiving comes close to this.
Well, Dave, you've seen this movie many times, and as a connoisseur of film, how would you say this ranks on the John Hughes scale? Like in the pantheon of John Hughes movies, how does this stick out to you?
Yeah, so for me, this has got to be number one. And I know obviously I've said it's like the comedy I've watched my whole life, but I just feel like this is a John Hughes movie that nobody has ever really turned on. Like when people talk about it, they're kind of just like, oh, almost like Shawshank in a way or something, where it's just like this universally kind of loved movie. But I would maybe put Ferris Bueller as a close second because that is, to me, maybe his most iconic thing or known for.
Right. And Drew, obviously John Hughes is known a lot for, especially in the 80s, for the teen angst, like
Yeah.
those teen movies. And this was really different. This is a very, sort of adult problems. What do you think as far as how you'd place this movie in the larger John Hughes pantheon?
I think you guys both nailed it. I think there's like two different categories. There's like the teen angst ones, and then there's because I'm a huge fan of Uncle Buck. I don't know if you guys like Uncle Buck, but
Oh, yeah.
I love John Candy, and that's why it's funny like how this one escaped me for so long. But I think Uncle Buck's a great movie, and you look at like the couple of these, I would say this is better than Uncle Buck, just in terms of like watching it for the second time here. But I'm a fan of like Weird Science. I love that. I love obviously Ferris Bueller, like Dave said. But I think as somebody who hasn't seen this really many times, I have to say this is like up there for me right now. Like I really like this movie a lot after watching it for the second time. And I think to me this cracks that top kind of three for somebody who hadn't seen it before. I think it was just a really great movie overall.
Well, following up on that, Drew, tell us, since you just saw this for the first time recently, and I'm sure you've heard people talking about it, what was your mental image of this movie before you watched it? Like, what did you expect it to be? What was the
Yeah.
hype that you were anticipating? And then how did it live up to that?
I would say the mental image is the picture that you showed of Dave's like the canvas print there or whatever. I remember just seeing John Candy and Steve Martin holding the trunk. And every time I thought of the movie, I thought of the trunk, like because it was just this thing that I've seen pictures of for so long. I didn't know what to expect. I knew it was them traveling. I knew it was them sort of going through a lot of different situations that were uncomfortable for them both. But I guess I didn't understand the relationship, especially the I won't say the twist at the end, but the reveal at the end that actually hit me pretty hard when I saw that because I feel like I wasn't expecting it. I was kind of like hearing John Candy talk about his wife, you can kind of think through the end in your mind. But I think seeing that actually had a really emotional twist that I guess I didn't expect it to hit me as hard as it did. I thought it was just going to be this goofy comedy of these two guys getting into weird situations, but I feel like this had a heck of a lot of heart, and it actually was more apparent the second watch than the first one because I feel like I knew what to expect and I was feeling for him even more versus like, oh, this guy is at this other guy's throat. They're frustrated at each other and all that other stuff. So I really didn't know what to expect going in the first time. I thought it was gonna be more of like a slapstick comedy, but I think I walked away with it having a lot more heart. And I think what you said, Dave, about this being like a comforting movie, I can totally understand that. And I feel like now this will be something that I watch around the holidays now moving forward because it had such a comforting, cozy feel. All things considered, even with some of the heavy kind of themes towards the end. But I really, really enjoyed it, and it was more heartful, I guess, and emotional than what I had expected going into it. I thought it was gonna be more of a slapstick, if I'm being, direct about what I thought it was.
Right. Well, Dave, I know a lot of people here or that are listening to this may not have seen the movie yet. What are the things that you hope new viewers, like recently Drew, would get out of watching this movie? What are those special things that you would hope newcomers would experience?
I'm actually glad that Drew said that actually the heart of the movie kind of surprised him. I guess like trailer and clips of the movie would make it look a little more slapsticky, but I know people who have watched it, like who haven't seen it, and maybe I'm gonna watch it with them or recommend it to them. I try to even tell them, like, I'm telling you it's my favorite comedy, but don't expect to be like laughing and falling out of the chair the whole time because it's actually not that kind of comedy. It's actually a little more subtle at times. Even times it goes way over the top, but I just think if you've never seen it, the heart is what's gonna bring you back to it actually, and the comedy will come from more repeated viewings.
Yeah, and I'll say that's, I think, one thing where over the years, like, I caught bits and pieces of it on television, and I'm like, "Oh, it's Steve Martin and John Candy," and but the clips I saw, like, in and of themselves, without knowing the context, weren't, like, goofy pratfall, laugh out loud funny moments, so I was like, "Oh, that looks fine," and I just never got back to it, but it's like everything is based on character, and, like Jay Wiggins joining us today. Rather than the large usual cast of characters in Hughes films, it's interesting to see the focus on the dynamics of these two main characters throughout the entire movie. That's a great thought. And Joss says Del Griffith and Neal Page, Griffith and Page forever. For me, and I want you guys to kind of maybe react to this and see if you felt the same way. When I first saw the movie, I remember thinking that Neal Page he kind of came in hot. Like, he really seemed very angry, maybe understandably so, but like I felt like when he was just tearing into Del in the hotel room, like towards the beginning of the movie, that I felt, man, that's
Me
rough.
too.
Like I kind of lost sympathy a bit for Neal. Like, and so I think that kind of like, well, I don't know if I can totally get on Neal's side. Like, this isn't necessarily funny. It's kind of hurtful, and you see John Candy react to that. It's different watching it subsequent times, but because I think everything fills in a bit. But do you feel like, Dave, like over the years, do you feel like you side more with Del or Neal, or do you think Neal is too angry to be sympathetic, or do you take his side?
I take Neal's side actually. If I was in that situation and you spill beer all over the bed and you're smoking cigarettes in the room and you trash the bathroom, at a certain point, I'm snapping on you. I don't care how kind in your heart you are. At some point, you got to realize you got to read the room, man. Like, there's only one other guy in here, and we got the one bed. Like, you've got to tone it down just a little bit, Del. We'll get on your side, but I may myself have been more of a Neal. Sorry to say.
That's interesting. And it's interesting, the impactful part of the scene, I think, is Steve Martin going on and on. But if you do look at the scene before Steve Martin gets angry, I mean, Del kind of says some, mean things too, like a tight ass. I think he calls him a tight ass and stuff like that. So it's like pressure building. I don't know, Drew, how did that hit you, that whole scene and Neal's attitude?
I kind of went back and forth on it, but then when I saw the socks in the sink, that kind of got, I was a little bit on Neal's side there. There was a level of, he let him pay for the room. There was like this weirdness where I kind of kept going back and forth on which side I was actually on. I think that Neal snapping, I can understand it, but I feel like he was pretty mean in what he said there, especially with, you could tell Candy was, I don't know, he was just sort of, he seemed like a lonely dude, and he was definitely quirky, but he seemed sort of like a lonely guy that was kind of looking like he needed a friend or something. You could just read it a little bit, at least for me, from somebody who hadn't seen this before. So I think when he snapped on him, I felt bad because he really went hard on him. It was not like, hey, you messed up. Hey, man, we're sharing this room. Like, give me a little space. It was just like he went on and on and on. But I also get it, right? Like, he's probably jet lagged. He's frustrated. He wants to be home. You say things you don't mean sometimes when you're tired and frustrated. But I think, seeing that boardroom scene in the beginning, like, I guess it was weird because I didn't know, like, what are you supposed to think of this guy? Like, is he supposed to be some rich guy? Like, is he supposed to be some hoity-toity, like tight ass, right? Or whatever he said, like stuck up kind of guy. He's like this big executive. Like, they didn't explain it too much, right? He's working on the ads for his boss, and his boss was being tough on him. So I get his frustration, but there was like, I wasn't sure if they were playing like a class thing with him, because it's like, this guy's in a suit. He's like, wants to fly first class and all this other stuff. And then, you have John Candy's character who's living out of a trunk, essentially selling shower curtain rings. Like there was different like level there. So I wasn't sure if they were trying to do that so that you would feel maybe more sympathy for John Candy's character, but I kept going back and forth. But to Dave's point, like if I was in that situation, I think I'd also probably snap too, just because maybe I wouldn't have said the things that he said, but I can understand why he was frustrated. Put it that way. The socks in the sink is like, that's the violation. I think that would get me. That would get me more than the beer.
Right. And it's interesting that you talk about like there's this read on Dell where he needs a friend.
Yeah.
Or he's kind of lonely. And Dave, that's one of the magic things I think about this movie. It'd be so easy to do a movie about just an annoying guy. But John Candy is annoying not just because of what he does, but it's you get the sense that he is sort of emotionally draining, that he's like needy, that he needs a friend, whereas Neal just it's like, no, we got to keep this, arms distance. How do you feel, Dave, about the driver for Dell's character? Like, do you think he's driven by this needing a friend, loneliness? Or I've heard other people say that he's trying to get free stuff. Like he sees Neal as a mark and someone who could help pay for things. And that's kind of why he's traveling with Neal. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I always just took it as he was so lonely that he didn't understand that he was being overbearing, which is something I even do myself when I've been at home for too long. I go link up with somebody and then I can't shut up. Ken, you've experienced it. But like, I think there's something there that when you're getting those emotional connections that you haven't been getting, you kind of lose control a little bit, almost like a kid when they go hang out with their friends. They get a little more wound up or something. So I never took it as he was taking advantage of him. The only time I kind of questioned what Dell did is when he used his credit card to rent the car. And he says, I was going to send you the money. But in my mind, I'm always like, you might have just moved on too if you never heard from the guy again.
Right. That's a really good point, because there was that whole shower curtain scene, and Drew, I kind of thought that the idea that Dell was trying to say grift off of Neal, kind of is laid to rest when he actually tries to pay Neal back. He's like, this is your cut. This is the like, I want to give you the money back. And but there is that complication of using his credit card to rent the car. How do you read it, Drew? Like, kind of coming to this movie fresh, is Dell trying to grift off of Neal, or is he genuinely just wanting companionship?
I took it the way Dave said, where I felt like he seemed genuinely like, and maybe that's me just reading John Candy as this like very warm guy, but I always took it as he needed a friend and he wasn't looking to, maybe grift. I think, and to the point you guys made, by the point that they were at, after Neal had been so mean to him so many times, at the last kind of point, like even if he did take his card for the car, I kind of took it as, well, this guy was so mean to him so many times. It's like, you know what? He kept trying to ditch me over and over and over. All right, I'll take this car, and maybe he would pay him back, but I didn't take it as he was like grifting, like he was in a situation. Had they stayed together, he might have said, okay, I'll pay. He just happened to have this card. So I took it as more, maybe he made like a split-second decision after he had been basically emotionally abused the whole movie for good reason, because they had been at each other's throats. But I took that as, hey, I got this card, should I do this? I don't know, I'm gonna do it, whatever. He was mean to me, but maybe he would have paid him back. But I did not think he was grifting from him. I thought he was really trying to look for companionship. Personally, that's how I read it.
Right. And Dave, let me ask you, let's flip it for a second. Like, Dell, what does he see in Neal, like right off the bat? Because Neal is, by all accounts, trying not to have any association with Dell, right off the bat. Yet, for whatever reason, Dell he sees something in Neal, or he sees potential, or maybe he's just that desperate. But what does Dell see in Neal?
I think the start of it is when they're talking at the airport is he genuinely feels bad that he stole the cab. He didn't realize he had done that. And I think even from that point, he's just trying to smooth that over. Even when they wind up next to each other on the airplane, I think he's a little more like, well, I know we had that problem with the cab, but why don't we be friends now that we're sitting next to each other? And that's just his nature of Dell. That's who he is. He's always going to try to smooth it over and make it work.
What do you think, Drew?
I was gonna ask you guys, like, did he purposefully steal that cab, or was it more of like a so whatever? Like, it was hard for me to tell what he was doing. Like, watching that, was he more just like, oh, oops, like he just oblivious to the whole thing, or was he nefariously trying to steal that? Because I agree with what Dave was saying. Like, I think that he seemed like he was trying to smooth it over, but I wasn't sure how like vindictive it was that he was like stealing the cab. I don't know what. Sorry, I answered your question with a question, but I'm curious what you guys think. Like, did he do it on purpose, like vindictively? I couldn't get a read on that.
Well, it's interesting that Dell basically, when Neal said you stole my cab, Dell kind of flipped it and said, "Oh, you're the guy who tried to steal my cab." And
Yeah.
he seemed very genuine when he said it, and maybe that was his perspective on it. It's like, "Oh, you're the guy who tried to take my cab."
Yeah, it was hard to read because it just seemed like he was oblivious to the whole thing. Like, it's like what you said earlier, Dave. Like, you don't realize like what you're doing. Like, you're just being, if you're being yourself and you're just like, he just happened to annoy him. It's like, oh, here's a cab. Let me just get in here. Like, he didn't think anything of it. At least that's how I read it, but I could be wrong on that. Just watching it without seeing it 100 times, like that's how I took it. It was just something he did, and he didn't think twice about it.
Also,
Right.
I would just say that moment is one of my favorite shots of the movie is when Steve Martin is looking at him, trying to be like, where do I know this guy from?
Yeah.
And then they just bring the cab window into the airport and he kind of looks through it at him in the airport. That's one of my favorite edits in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great expression from John Candy there.
Yeah.
And so something that we might talk about during this discussion is the fact that there's so much footage in this movie that was cut. Like this movie was originally over 3 hours long. And one of those scenes is available if you get the 4K Blu-ray. You can watch all the deleted scenes, but I am going to play one extension of that airport scene and kind of get your guys' reaction.
The smoking the cigarettes indoors.
That's what that always is so shocking to me. See that right now, even though like we obviously grew up around that.
The guy sitting next to Steve Martin is also smoking a cigarette.
Yes. It really is amazing just like how common cigarette smoking was. But that in that scene, I don't know if you can tell, but like Dell was eating the hot dog and exhaling the cigarette smoke through his nostrils at the same time. And apparently they cut that because women in the test audiences found that so repulsive that it made Dell look so repulsive. I don't know. I love it. But I don't know. There are lots of scenes like that, like throughout all these deleted scenes. And Dave, I know you've seen like all the deleted scenes. What is your view on all of those scenes? Is it worth watching those? Could they have made a great 3-hour version of this movie? What do you think?
I will say, as a lifelong fan of this movie who knew about those scenes for many years, mostly because some of them are in the trailer, so that's how they kind of became like this where are all these other scenes legend. When I finally saw them, I was totally okay with them not being in the movie. Almost every single one of them felt like too much Dell. And Dell is such a fine line of I'm annoying, but I'm also charming. And if you just give him that coney dog with the chili and he's smoking a cigarette, like now it's suddenly just a little too gross. Or I personally, I also don't think they need to be knocking on his weight that much in the movie. Like they kind of make him gross in his cleanliness habits already. But most of those deleted scenes are incredibly funny, but to me are too much for the final cut of the movie. But what I do love about watching them is, as a filmmaker myself, and I've pretty much only made comedies, every single one we've made, we leave room for improv every single time. And if somebody's cutting it up on set, you just let them go and you have fun if you've got the time. And basically every one of those movies I've edited kind of comes down to this same thing. You've got tons of stuff that you're like, well, this is good, but am I boring the audience? Am I giving them too much of this? And at some point you've got to get serious and be like, all right, I don't think we need the chili dog. Maybe we just go straight to this thing. So I love the filmmaking aspect of it, because at least that's how I'm kind of making my own comedies. And I think we kind of heard that's like how Judd Apatow did a lot of his stuff back in the late 2000s. So comedy wise, I think it's the best way to do it. If you've got John Candy there, let him cook. But when it comes down to the edit, this movie specifically, as an edited movie, I appreciate more than most films, actually, because it is so unbelievably efficient. It is so tight. There's like barely any fat in this movie anywhere. And to know that they had that much extra stuff, that's actually the achievement, to walk away from that stuff and say, nope, we're going for the streamlined thing. We're not going to hang on to every joke that we think is funny. So to me, I loved watching the old scenes, but I don't think they need to be in the movie, with the exception of the scene where they eat on the airplane, because that was always in the TV edit. And I still quote that scene all the time. The scene where they're eating on the airplane, I think, was actually maybe the only casualty to the cuts.
Yes, that was a hilarious scene. I love that scene. I'll be honest, I really love the deleted scenes. Like, I just sat there and just eat. Like, it's an hour, and I think that's probably half of the deleted scenes that, you know, they haven't found the other half yet. I just felt like that hour breezed by. But one subplot is that the burglar who comes into the hotel room and steals the cash was actually a pizza delivery guy that he got angry at Dell. And actually, let me play some of this, and then Drew, I want to get your reaction, because this is like
19, you say?
Yes.
There you go. That's for you. Put it towards your college fund.
It's a $20 bill.
Yes, it is.
That pizza was like 19 bucks.
Yeah.
Well, that's only a 5% tip.
You're very good with figures. You're going to enjoy college.
You know what I call a 5% tip?
Well, where I come from, we call it $1.
Yeah. Well, where I come from, I call it an insult.
An insult? No. An insult is what your father did to your mother to get you. That's an insult. Good night. Come on.
So that whole thing, and there is more with that pizza delivery guy, and that kind of sets up this whole thing where he breaks in and steals their money. So Drew, okay, I guess back in the day on network television, sometimes they'd take a movie and they'd split it over 2 nights, like, and they'd add all this extra footage in, so it'd be like a 2-night thing. Like, do you think this movie could be like a 2-night, like night 1, part 2 of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, where it's this big epic adventure? Or do you think that it's better just as like a tight feature-length movie?
I think a tighter feature-length movie, and I agree with everything Dave said. Like, I think, especially comedies, to me, like, I think a 2-part comedy is weird. Like a drama, I can understand that because maybe there's like a big cliffhanger, but I feel like a lot of the comedy aspects is like getting in the vibe of the movie and feeling the tone of it, and kind of like going on the ride and the journey. Like, I think it's sort of hard to split something like that in two pieces, in my opinion. I mean, you could do it, I guess, but I think it's better as like a tighter sort of flow. And I agree with what Dave said. Like a lot of those deleted scenes are funny in context of maybe like the situation that they're in, but I think when you look at the flow of the movie, like they didn't have extra stuff that didn't really add to the plot. Like the one you just showed is interesting and maybe have added a little bit more context as to why they were robbed, but I also feel like you don't need it. Like, I don't know.
Right.
It's like they got robbed. That's the end of it. It doesn't really matter why they got robbed. Like they just got robbed and they lost their money. Maybe that's one that I think you could have left in, I guess. But I was with it until he insulted the kid at the very end there. Like that again, to what Dave said, it's a little too much there versus like the insult about his mom or whatever and his dad. I think up until then you can be like, all right, this kid robbed him because he got stiffed on a tip. Okay. But then when he said that, it was just like a little too much. You know, like you said, Dale's like kind of annoying, but kind of endearing. And that was a little bit more like vindictive, I feel. So
Right.
I prefer comedies to be like one shot through versus cut in between. But a drama I could see being like multiple parts, like those Stephen King like TV movies and stuff like that. That's how I would say. So I prefer it the way that it is, and I do think it's an achievement that they. What is the runtime on this? Like 93 minutes or something. It's like an hour and 33,
Yeah.
which is like impressive, and it doesn't feel too long. It doesn't feel too short. Like it really is like a perfect length, and I feel like everything added. I think something to the story and nothing took away from it. And you start adding some of those other things in, and it might start to meander a little bit versus getting to the point. And I think somebody said it in the chat earlier. This movie's about these two guys, like and their relationship, not like all this other stuff that's going on. I think
Right.
the other stuff is sort of a distraction from their relationship, and I think that's what makes it so good personally, that it focuses on the core, and I think that's why it's done well.
Right. Well, another subplot that was deleted was Neal's wife, I guess, thought that Neal was having an affair. Like, and that was kind of like this kind of running subplot throughout the movie, which is basically removed. Dave, what do you think? Do you think that that's they made a good cut there, or how do you think that would have changed the movie if they left that in?
You know, that might have been some, I don't know like what they have to use, but that might have been something they could have left in, but just made it super short. Like it could have been like one line from the wife, you know, not so obvious as like, I don't know if I trust him, but you know, there could have been, or even just a look after she hung up the phone that said like, I don't think what he's telling me is true. Because I have heard many people over the years say, "Oh my God, I can't stand Steve Martin's wife. He's going through all this hell." And she just, every time she's on the phone with him, she's like mad at him, basically. So that might actually be something in the edit that they just kind of eventually said, well, if people don't like her, whatever. We're going for the tighter thing. So it might have actually helped keeping that in some small regards, but I did not want to see it pop up multiple times through the movie. That's for sure.
Right. And there were other things too. Famously, Steve Martin, I think in a recent documentary, read some of the script, the original script for the very final scene when Dell's in the train station, and Dell actually has this long monologue where he's pouring his heart out about like everything. And Steve Martin is like, you know, I don't understand why they cut all that. It was like this beautiful scene, but you know, in the movie, he just says, Marie's been dead for 8 years, and then it kind of cuts to Neal's reaction, and that's it. Drew, do you feel like that's enough? Do you wish kind of that scene was still in there, or do you feel like that scene lands kind of perfectly the way it is?
I think it would have been interesting to see how it worked in the context of the movie, but I'm of the camp of like less is more. And I think it actually, to me personally, it hit harder that he didn't go on this giant monologue because I don't know, when you think about emotional and psychological, trauma that people go with, not everybody's going to just pour their heart out to everybody. I know they were they had been on this 48-hour adventure together, but at the same time, like, they still didn't really know each other. So for him to tell him all this stuff, I actually like that he didn't say much. Like, the kind of the shortened version of it was actually hit pretty emotionally hard because he didn't have to say much. Like, you could kind of read it on him. And then when I liked how he kind of flashed back to him thinking about all the scenarios, because like John Candy's been through a lot. Like, yeah, he might be annoying, but like he wasn't trying to put that on Neal. He's just living his life. And I think that makes you sympathize with him more because you're not like, man, why is this guy telling me his whole life story? It's like he doesn't feel like he has to. He's traveling around. He doesn't have a home. Like, he's maybe a lonely person. It's not like he was like trying to constantly make friends. Like, he was just in the situation. He was living his life. And I think that to me was emotionally heavier than like a giant monologue. Although I would like to have seen, John Candy perform that. It's cool from him performing it, but I prefer that it was shorter. I think it hit, at least for me, it hit harder, I think, because it was shorter. I don't know if you guys agree.
What do you think, Dave?
Absolutely. Short and sweet, always the way to go, in my opinion, as well. And I think specifically, just saying that in one sentence, I don't have a home, my wife's been dead. Like, what else do you need to know? Like, you've spent the time with them. It's, oh, that explains everything about you in those few words. And then it also leads to what I think is one of the best edits to a needle drop of all time, of them carrying the trunk to every time you go away. It's a classic moment. And then once you see them carrying the trunk, the movie's already over in your mind in a way. You're actually in the bonus for the last like minute and a half.
Yeah.
And getting to see them come in the house, because as soon as you see that he invited them, you're like, oh, what a perfect ending.
All right. Yes. Jaws Pax says Dell is flirting, friendship mode with Neal all the time. Dell needs emotions in his life. Neal only needs his family, at least until the end of the movie. Very interesting. And yes, 3 coins and a fountain. Those. Who comes up with that for a song to sing? That's so funny.
Neal
and then
Page.
Jay Wiggin. What's that?
Neal Page does, the boring Neal Page.
He does. Jay says, I'd love to see a deleted scene where the motel manager discovers the gigantic hole in the wall from the car. Right. And my understanding is like anything you could think of for a deleted scene, they may have actually shot. So it would be interesting to see all of that stuff. And of course, R.I.P. John Candy and John Hughes. So I thought it might be interesting because obviously Neal and Dell face a lot of adversity in this movie. Can we determine a villain? So I've kind of put like all potential villains up here. I've coded them with letters, and I wanted to get your guys' thought. There's Kevin Bacon at the beginning, who is racing to get the cab and takes it from Neal. No dialogue, just a lot of running and a lot of looks. There's the flight attendant, and everyone thinks of D, which is their car rental lady. But B, that flight attendant is actually really mean to Neal, like really mean, like just saying, I've just about had enough of you. Like, why would you say that? I don't know. C, we've seen him before. He's the burglar. We now know he's a pizza delivery guy, but in the movie, he's just like a burglar who comes in and steals the money. D is the car rental lady. That's probably one of the most famous scenes in the entire movie. And then E, you could say, is Neal's temper. What do you guys think is who do you think is the biggest villain in this movie? Dave, we'll start with you.
I'm gonna go with B or D, because there's nothing I hate more than being told by some company with a lot of money that the reservation I made is no longer there because they chose for it to not be there, not because it's something I did. So no offense to the workers of those businesses, but I might be acting like Neal Page a little bit. I'm sorry to say again, but if I rented a car and the car is not there, we're going to have a bit of a problem.
Right. Right. Drew, how would you rank these? Who's the worst villain?
Man, this is a tough one because by definition it's C because they literally stole money. Like I think that's the definition there, but I tend to agree with Dave on B and D. Like it was funny, the Kevin Bacon alert was like when I first saw it, and again, having never seen this movie, I'm like, oh, Kevin Bacon's in this movie. And I was expecting him to have actually like a part or something, and then the fact that he was just in it, they're fighting for the cab was one part. But I'll say between B and D, I want to say B more than D. And here's why, because with D, like the car was gone and that sucked real bad for him. But and to give you sympathy for him, obviously you had her on the phone making a personal call while there's a long line. And I've worked customer service jobs before. Like I would be so frustrated at a coworker if they were doing that. But like he was kind of mean to her first in D, where he kind of went at her. And I get why, because he had just basically walked on the runway and fell through the snow and whatever. But B was just straight up mean to him right away. Like she, and I get it. Like I've never flown first class in my life, so I can't speak to that or whatever. And I'm not an attendant on a flight, but she was like super mean to him right away, had zero sympathy. And then that other dude came in who I don't know who he was, but it seemed like she knew him and he maybe flew a bunch. And like the implication to me was like, did they take his seat and give it to this guy? Like that's what I thought of in my mind right away. So I would say probably B. I'm with Dave on B. I didn't like I didn't like the attitude there, and I didn't like the way she treated him. So, but C is the actual definition because he literally stole. But I'm saying B.
Yeah, I looking at this again and having I just watched it last night just to prepare for this. I kind of agree. I kind of think B. I think she's like really mean, because D, you could say she was being a little neglectful at the beginning, just having her phone conversation. But once she gets into the conversation with Neal, she really kind of holds her composure and tries to deal with it professionally. Even though she's getting verbally abused by Neal. But yeah, B seems kind of, I don't know, kind of the worst. But what's very interesting, and Dave, I think you mentioned this before, is that airport scene where or I'm sorry, the car rental scene where Neal's blowing up. That one scene gave this movie an R rating. And you and I think when we saw it for the first time, we saw the TV version that got rid of all of that. And I'd be interested to get Drew's take on this too. But like when I first saw the movie, I saw the TV cut. I didn't see any of the swearing. I actually thought that scene was funny. And like I thought it was very funny. And I really liked at the very end of it, that car rental lady, the way she in her accent says, "You're screwed." I thought that was pretty funny. But lots of F-bombs in the official R-rated version. And Drew, okay, how did that hit you? Like you just saw this movie straight up with all those F-bombs.
Yeah.
How did that shock you? Did it seem like it fit inside the movie, or I don't know, how did that seem?
I'll say I thought it fit inside the movie, and this is coming from somebody who I knew of this movie, so it's not like I never knew, and I knew that it was famous for its R rating because of one scene that basically had 18 F-bombs. So like I guess I was waiting for it when I saw it, but it was one of those situations where it was kind of comical to me. Like he doesn't seem like an aggressive person that's actually gonna like violently hurt the lady. Like he just seemed, and maybe it's because it's Steve Martin. It's like I have an affection for him, like as an actor and stuff. But it didn't land like, oh my God, I'm so offended. Like I actually felt for him, and in my mind, I was kind of like, yeah, man, F this, F that too, because you could kind of feel for him. He just like rolled through the mud and everything, and his car wasn't there. The bus left, and the culmination of every single thing that had happened to him by that point. Like you mentioned, he snapped earlier, Dave. Like this was like the true snap moment for me, where it's like he just had enough. He had enough of this crap, and he just couldn't take it. But it's funny because you guys, we were chatting before we did this. This is one of those scenes where I guess if you had grown up with the TV edit, and I watched TV edits of a lot of movies growing up, like Ghostbusters being one of my favorite movies growing up. If you guys have seen us on the show before. But I remember there was a scene with Dan Aykroyd that was in that movie that shocked me the first time I saw it, because I was younger and I had seen the TV edit and I'm like, oh my God, that's not in the movie. What is this? So it was like, I guess if you guys hadn't seen this before, seeing that the first time probably shocked you too. But I thought it fit within the context of the film. And I don't know, otherwise this movie to me is like 1989 PG. Like I don't see how it's R. It's just the number of F-bombs. Even when you put like 2 in there, and maybe it was still PG for 1989. I don't know. It didn't shock me, and I actually like it in the movie personally. I think it works.
Right. Well, Dave, since you saw it first, the TV cut first, I guess my question to you is, should they have like completely done the scene without F-bombs, secure the PG rating, and it could have been like this family movie that like I probably would have seen when I was 8, and watched all these years, instead of sort of limiting it to the more adult audience? Like, do you feel like the F-bombs are worth it, or was there a huge potential to make this more broad family entertainment?
They're totally worth it. I think in today's day and age, who cares, honestly? Like
Right.
maybe in the 80s that was like, oh, we better restrict people, but are we going on the internet and acting like we're not hearing, reading comments that say way worse stuff all day, every day? So when I first saw it that way, unedited, to me, it was like, oh, this is a huge bonus. This scene just got better, actually. And I think it's also, as Drew was saying, like this is the moment where he truly snaps. So even if it is, to me, family friendly with all the F-bombs still in there, this is the moment though that the adults sympathize with and understand the most, probably. And that's probably what I was just saying before, is that, you go to these companies and you feel like you're getting thrown around. So I think that's probably the scene where all the adults who have traveled are like, yes, I totally get what is happening here. And maybe the kids are just seeing him as too angry. So better everybody sees it with the F-bombs, in my opinion.
Do you guys think that like if this was made today, they would? I feel like they probably wouldn't have put it in, because I feel like the studio pressure, like you said, to make the money would have been there. So I feel like it's like the kind of thing that would happen in 1989, because it's like, we don't care. This is what makes the movie. And obviously I'm an industry outsider, so I don't know how that stuff works. But I just feel like, you look at certain superhero movies that are made this day, like it's very hard to get an R-rated Wolverine, for example. Like when they finally made Logan, it's like, well, they're going to miss out on this wide audience. And I feel like, especially with the John Hughes side of things, like, I don't know, I wonder if there was a debate back then, or was it, no, this is just what it's going to be. Like, I wonder if they had a fight to keep it in. Do you guys know? I'm just genuinely curious.
I don't know. I'm not sure personally. I know back in the day, they specifically, in all of these movies, they shot takes for the TV edit.
Mhm.
A famous one is Spaceballs, that scene where it's like, oh, I'm surrounded by a-holes,
Yeah.
I think it's morons. They did an entire separate take version of that scene. So I don't know. Dave, do you know?
No, I don't know, but I believe exactly what you said was the thinking of it. We're gonna do it how we want to do it, and then maybe we'll just film some other crap to put on TV that we don't care about as much.
Yeah.
It might have also been too that, I don't know when R rating started, but it might not have been known as like a box office killer back then as much as it was, or that we understood in the 90s.
Right. Yeah, because everything eventually, like you were saying, Drew, it's like it had to be PG-13. And now it's almost like they'd want it to be PG-13 to get like the maximum audience or something.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Well, speaking of like all of these modes of transportation, I thought I'd kind of pull them all up here and we can decide like which was the easiest for them and which was the hardest for them. In terms of what is the worst mode of transportation versus the easiest mode in this movie. And so we have the plane. That's famously Del is taking off his shoes and socks and just talking at Neal, which seems pretty bad. There's the flatbed where they're Neal's trying to get a glove, but the dog pops up and starts barking at them. Of course, it's cold. And then the train, which seemed very pleasant for a while until it got stopped and they had to like walk like towards, I don't know how far they had to walk, miles probably. Then the bus, which is, you know, the 3 coins in a fountain versus the Flintstones. The car, which to me, I think that scene where Del is driving in between the 2 trucks is probably, in the context of a movie where so much tension has built up, that scene is such a release of tension. That may be one of what I think is the funniest scenes in a movie of all time. Just like it ascent, you know, when Del becomes like a you know, a devil, and so just amazing flight of fancy sequence there. But that was kind of a crazy part, the automobiles, and then the cheese truck at the end. I don't know. So what do you guys think? Dave, what do you think is the easiest mode of transportation in this movie and the worst mode of transportation?
The worst by far to me is the back of the flatbed truck. I hate being cold and I hate being in windy, cold environments. So that's the only one that provided zero comfort at any second along the way, it seems like. And I would say best maybe is a toss up between the car and the train, just because the train, they had to take a long walk after, but it seemed like when they were on it, they were pretty good. And same for the car. They were doing pretty good until it caught on fire.
What do you think, Drew?
I agree with Dave. Like, I don't know. I think being stuck on a plane next to somebody that you don't want to sit next to sucks pretty bad. Like, especially in a very tight place, and like you're not going anywhere. Like, there's nowhere to go. Like, you can't even really easily go to the bathroom. Like, even that's got a line. Like, I don't know. When I'm on a plane, like I don't even want to get up. Like, I'm here till we land. Like, I just don't want to get up. And then add the fact that he took his shoes off. Like, foot stuff for like me in like movies like this, that's like, ugh, gross. Like, I don't like that. So that grossed me out. I like the train, actually. I think trains are pleasant. I haven't been on them a ton, but you know, I watch YouTube videos of people traveling by train. It's interesting to see where you can go. And that train seemed, like you said, all things considered, pretty nice. I've been on buses before, and buses can be pretty rough. So bus is kind of up there with the plane. If you're like really irritated, maybe people singing the Flintstone theme song would not be up there with you. But I don't know. Like, on the flip side of that, a bus, if everybody's having fun, could be really fun. It's like the camaraderie of everybody being cool. I have to agree with you though, that automobile scene, like, especially as someone who hadn't seen this movie before, like I belly laughed. Like, I laughed out loud so hard. Like, when I was watching that, when his hands got caught, that was like the start of it. I'm like, oh man, like it was very slapstick for me. It was very, very, very funny. So I really liked that. But I would say the worst to me is it's probably the flatbed, because if he braked hard, I mean, you fly out the back, you're dead. Like, it's over. So, and being freezing cold is pretty bad. So I'd say the flatbed is probably the worst to me.
Yeah, you guys made some amazing points. I think for me, like, the thing that pushes it to plane for me is just the claustrophobic feeling of like you are in your seat belted in, and you are next to someone who's basically pushing against you, that is not only loud but smells terribly, and you can't escape. Like, to me, that'd be difficult to deal with. Then I don't know, the cheese truck didn't look too bad at the end. I mean, considering everything that they went through.
They were cold, but like they were at least in there and they weren't around anybody else. Like, I didn't find that one so bad. It reminded me of Home Alone when they're in the back of the rental truck, you know, and they're with the polka band, John Candy. So that's what that reminded me of.
Yes. Well, so let me ask you guys, kind of just in summing this up, and if we're talking about planes, trains, and automobiles, why does this movie endure? Why does it seem to be getting more popular as the years are going by? And then, in addition to that, why don't they make movies like this anymore? Dave, what do you think?
I think we touched on it a little bit before. I think it is the heart that will always make this movie live on. There's a lot of subtle, funny things in the movie, actually, that I actually think take repeat viewings to sometimes catch some of those things. Like, maybe specifically, I'll say Steve Martin actually has some of the funniest lines of the movie, but we always think of Dell. Like when Dell tells him, "I got a motto: like your work, love your wife." Steve Martin says back to that, "Yeah, I'll have to remember that sometime." And to me, that's actually like one of the funniest lines in the movie. So I think it's the heart, and I think that also that it has a holiday attached to it that is specifically about being together with your family. So it fell right into a perfect pocket for itself.
Drew, what are your thoughts? And if there are other people watching who haven't seen it yet, as a relatively new viewer of the movie, how would you recommend them seeing it and why?
Yeah, I think definitely I would recommend you watch this movie if you've not seen it before. Like it lives up to the hype, I think, and I can completely understand why it has such a following. And like Dave mentioned, the heart, like the emotional like journey of it too, and like being able to kind of live through these two guys, like they're from different walks of life, like different, personalities, and they create this bond over, 2 days, and they're trying to, even Steve thinks even Neal thinks, Dell's trying to get home for his family. So he doesn't know until towards the end when he finds out that he doesn't have a place and all that other stuff. So I think to me, the appeal of this is the relationship between these two very different people and the bond that they make, and the fact that you can kind of create like a friendship and a lasting relationship through traumatic situations. I mean, they ultimately did have a common goal, right? To get home, wherever that may be. And I think the struggle through that was, I think like defining aspect of this movie. But I definitely would recommend people watch it. Like I've seen it twice now. And again, like I love 80s movies. I love 90s movies. And somehow this one escaped me for the longest time. And I'm looking forward to actually watching it for a third time. Because I think, like you said, Dave, as I was watching again, I'm like, man, I knew some of the lines that were coming, but I wish I knew them better because I am somebody that quotes movies a lot in my life. And I was like, this is such a quotable movie. Like everything is quotable and it's so well written. And I think like the lines of the two guys, like you said, I think Neal actually does have some of the funnier lines. Like it's obvious to be like, oh, Dell's so funny. He's so funny. It's John Candy. But Steve Martin has a lot of funny lines in this movie, like you said. And I think that's what makes it. Like, I think these two guys together too, they just have a chemistry that you can't just make that up. Like, yeah, that scene, like that whole thing, and like, why are you why'd you kiss me in my ear or whatever he says? It's like these just like things they stick with you. And I feel like it's a very, very classic movie, and I completely understand why people love this and want to watch it over and over and over. It feels like it gets better every time you see it.
Yeah, and I will say I saw this movie for the first time 5 years ago, so I'm kind of a relative newcomer. I don't have like ancient nostalgia for it. But what you just said, Drew, I find is absolutely true. This movie gets better every time you watch it. And it has been the only movie in the past 5 years or maybe even beyond, since I've seen it for the first time, I watch it every holiday season. Like sometimes, like I know we talked about National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and I might watch that every few years, but like this one I've been watching every year. And so I don't know. Dave, can you tell us, like, from your experience, kind of wrapping up this movie, tell us how many times you've actually seen it, and do you experience that phenomenon too, where it just seems to get better the more you watch it?
Yes, and I think the quotes is a big part of it actually. So I'm glad you guys were touching on that. This is if not the most quotable movie to me. It's top 3 for sure. But I would say the more you watch it and you can quote it, it actually is one of those movies you just want to say the lines as they're happening. So it's good to watch it by yourself and not with somebody who hasn't seen it, so you're not annoying the crap out of them. But I honestly too, with the quotes, if you asked me to rank like my top 5 lines from this movie, it would probably be different every week that you asked me to do it. I might bounce around to anywhere in the script. So I do feel like it's your actors. Oh, this scene specifically actually is one of my favorite rants of John Candy in the whole movie when he asked him, "How do you know how fast you were going?" He says, "Oh, actually, my friend and I were just talking about that. See, we got a melted speedometer here." And that's just John Candy just absolutely at a 20 out of 10 in that scene, just crushing it. And even the cutaway to Steve Martin is hilarious in its own way. He says, "If I can't get my friend here home for Thanksgiving," and they show Steve Martin kind of look at Michael McKean in a way of like, "Yeah, man, I need to get home." And they just both look so pathetic and so dumb in the moment. So, there's something about this movie with your John Candy and Steve Martin factor and the lines together that the repeat viewings just get better and better and better. And once you even get past the lines, you start looking for things like when the taxi pulls away in the opening scene after he's stolen it, and they look down at the empty puddle, there's shower curtain rings in the empty puddle. Like there's stuff like that peppered through the whole movie. Or one of my other favorites is when they're eating in the diner. John Candy has a cigarette put out in the middle of his grapefruit. So it's like he clearly didn't even eat it. He just stuck a cigarette in it.
Well,
That's
I mean,
awesome.
that brings up the question, how do they rank as on-screen as an on-screen comedy duo, Steve Martin and John Candy? I mean, you're thinking like Abbott and Costello, you've got Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor, you have Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, you have all these like famous buddy movies. How do you think they rank, Drew?
Man, I think they're up there because I think the key to having a good duo is how different are they from each other. Like obviously you don't want people that are like exactly the same. You'll take the spotlight from one another, but I feel like especially the way they crafted the characters, so not only the acting style and the comedic chops of both of them, because Steve Martin, he does play more of like this, I don't want to say jerk, like he's not a jerk, right? But he's more the straight-laced guy. And John Candy, like Dave said it earlier, I think Dave said it really well. Like John Candy doesn't really know that he's being annoying. Like he's just living his life. And I think that like oblivious nature of how he's acting plays it up even funnier. Like when you think about, you mentioned like Danny Glover and Mel Gibson, it's like Riggs and Murtaugh. Like, you even look at Mel Gibson in that character, like he's so confident. He's just whatever. He's just unhinged. And then you have Danny Glover, who, in the famous words, he's too old for this crap. And like I like the dichotomy of the two. And I would say this is like up there, man, in the top 5 of like the sort of the duos. I just think they're so good together. And I wish they were, I wish John Candy was still around because, he was such a great actor and such a good person. And, that warmth about him. That's why I like Uncle Buck so much. He's just, like a warm guy. And I think, these two, I think they're up there with the duos in a lot of these movies. And I wish I'd seen it earlier looking back on it because I'd appreciate it more. But now I'm excited that I get to watch it more and get to learn more of, like you said, Dave, some of the nuances of some of the things, which I didn't even catch, honestly, which is cool that you pointed them out.
Dave, what do you think as far as the comedy duo and how they rank against other on-screen comedy duos?
I think they're absolutely in the top 5, and that is really a testament that they only did one movie together. Like that's what would even put them in the top 5 for me, that they only have this, and it's still considered such a great comedy duo. It's so tragic they never got to reunite. It absolutely would have happened, especially in today's world with legacy sequels and stuff like that. So I also would just highlight this comment here from Johnny Utah. Her last baby came out sideways is one of the funniest lines of the movie as well. The whole script, like every line you could, even John Candy's response to that is, "Oh, you're a real trooper."
Yes, It's just I think it's stuff like that that just these lines keep almost surprising you every time you watch it, and every time you watch it you notice something else. And whether it's that cigarette and the grapefruit, or just any of these lines, just the very true, genuine responses to very strange situations. Just very funny. And so
also at the Braidwood Inn, the guy who's checking them in does not call Steve Martin Neal. He calls him Nick.
Yeah,
that's another small one.
I like the other part that I thought was funny was when they were trying to get money and he was selling all the shower curtain rings and he was selling them as like earrings. Like I just thought, like, because he's a salesman and he's selling these things. Part of me wondered, like, is this even really his job, or is he making this up too? Like I thought about that for a second, the first time I saw it, but like how good he was at selling these things to people just showed you that he had that like infectious personality. Like you could understand he probably did have a lot of friends. Like you mentioned the guy at the hotel that called Neal Nick. Like he knew John Candy. It's like the driver of the OG Uber service with the guy with the crazy car. Like he knew all these people. It wasn't far-fetched for him to have a lot of like relationships and people that he knew, but I guess a lot of them didn't spend 48 hours in a hotel room with him or whatever to maybe be rubbed the wrong way. But I loved the whole scene of him selling those curtain rings to people as earrings. Like it really showed like how charismatic he was as a character. I thought that was a really, really like, I'd say powerful scene, but it said a lot without saying a lot, to me. I thought that stood out.
Yeah. I love that. I'll back you up on that. I love that scene too, because it's almost like you see Del come to life.
Yeah.
Like you see, like he's firing on all thrusters, maybe in a way that right. It's like he hasn't for a long time, but it's like this relationship and wanting to maybe impress Neal and contribute to this really inspires him to kind of bring out maybe an old school charm and sales skills that maybe he hasn't done in a while. And that's why it's so, disappointing the next scene when Neal basically says, now we got to split up. Because you can tell he's just so proud of like being able to get that money and make those sales and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. So Dave, do you have any like final words of wisdom for everyone watching and listening to this about planes, trains, and automobiles?
I think nothing that we haven't said already, other than if you haven't seen it, it's kind of a must watch. And maybe I'll say one thing this movie does that not many movies succeed in, and is making you constantly fantasize about what happens after the movie ends. You want to know if they stayed friends over the years. You want to think about them staying connected. You want to think that John Candy maybe even spent the whole weekend with them and was trying to leave, and Steve Martin was like, don't leave, just stay for the weekend. You want to think about what goes beyond what you are given, and most movies don't do that, actually.
Yes. Drew, do you have any final thoughts?
That was so well put, what Dave just said there. Like because I thought that too. I'm like, I wonder what happened at the end, and did Neal eventually get fed up with him again and be like, all right, his sympathy wore thin, or did they become lifelong friends? I feel like in my mind, I feel like they became lifelong friends. And I feel like in the headcanon that I have, I feel like once Neal knew why Del was the way he was and sort of going from place to place, I feel like he really did, at least again in my headcanon, I feel like that he turned the switch and it was like, all right, I got to take care of this guy. Like he's a good person. He might be a little hard to be around for long periods of time, but this guy is a good guy. And I like to think that they stayed friends. But I agree with you, Dave. Like, I wish that there would, like, there's not a lot of things that like need a legacy sequel to me, but I would have loved to know like where they wound up in the future. Did they stay friends and stuff? And like I said, in my mind they are. But I think people should watch this movie if you haven't seen it. I think it's a perfect holiday movie, and I actually would say so. Christmas Vacation is my #1 like holiday movie, like hands down. You guys know that about me. This actually made it into that list, I think. Like, I will watch this every year now, I think, because it's just such a good movie. I haven't shown my daughter, so, like, I was gonna show her. She's 9, and even with the scene with F-bombs, like, I think it's totally fine because she'll just laugh it off. but I think that she would probably enjoy it too. And I could see her like belly laughing at like the car and the picture that you had up, just of them like sitting in that like burnt out car. And I think you mentioned too about them, or someone put in the chat, like, love to see what happens to like the hotel, like them driving in this car. Like that image is up there with the trunk too, to me. Like this car scene is just ridiculous. And I just think it's such a great movie. I wish I had seen it earlier, but I am very thankful that I did see it. And I think it deserves every bit of praise that it's gotten over the years. And I think it's one that, like you said, Dave, I think it's going to age like a fine wine for me too, to be able to pick up some of the more nuanced things that I didn't see the first couple times watching it. So I think it's a really good movie, and I'm glad that I watched it, and I can't wait to watch it again. Actually, it's a fun one.
It is fun. And now that we've officially gone way past Thanksgiving and we're heading towards Christmas, we just got a super chat from Cliff. Thank you for supporting the channel, Cliff. Did watching this movie cause you to favor one form of transportation over the others? And we did rank them before, but Drew and Dave, can you give us your quick response for your favorite form of transportation after watching this movie?
I hate transportation altogether, so I'm not going to say anything good about any of them. The best it's going to get for me is me driving my own personal car, but even that's got its limits where I'm like, I need to be out of this car.
I was going to say the same as you, Dave. Like, I hate traveling. Like, I like to be at the place, but the act of traveling for me is I don't like it. I don't like flying. A train is fine, I guess, because like I don't have to do anything. Like once I'm on it, it's good. I like forms of transportation where you don't have to do anything. The plane to me is too intrusive because of the airport. Like I hate going to the airport. It's one of my least favorite experiences in life. I like the destination, but I don't like the trip. But I did think that in my mind, like whenever people are delayed, I'm like, why don't you rent a car? Because it's like by the time you wait, maybe, and if you needed to be home, like I was surprised they didn't rent a car earlier, and I was actually like Google Maps my phone. I'm like, what? How far is this? You know, I wanted to know. So I think cars probably the best just because you can control it. But I rage when I get stuck in traffic too, so that sucks. So I'm gonna agree with Dave on that. I don't like any.
Yes, thank you so much, Cliff. Thanks for the question. One last question for both of you. Jaws asks, Batman Returns, is that a Christmas movie or not? Dave, what do you say?
Sure. I don't, you know, I know like Die Hard and that always get thrown in the category or whatever. Are they not? I say yes to all of them. If you want it to be and it's around the holidays, go for it.
Nice. Drew?
I would say yeah, probably. Like it's not like about Christmas, but it's at Christmas time, and I think that I think you could say it's also a New Year's movie because it's like around that whole time. It's not outwardly about Christmas, but I agree with Dave. Like there's Christmas elements to it. They have Christmas trees. They go to the Christmas tree lighting and all that other stuff at the holiday lighting and stuff. So I would say sure. Yeah, I think it is, Jaws. I would say that it is.
I'll back you up on that too. I always thought of it as a Christmas movie, in a way. So, yeah, 100%. Well, Drew and Dave, thank you for joining us for this amazing discussion of planes, trains, and automobiles. I hope you have a very happy holidays. If I don't see you or talk to you guys, and then everyone watching, I hope you have an amazing holiday season. If you haven't seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles yet, check it out. It's on streaming on Paramount Plus at least, and if not, the local library is actually a great place where you can borrow DVDs and check out all kinds of movies. So I really recommend checking it out any way you can. I think it's always on Pluto TV too, for free. So so thank you guys, Drew and Dave. What a dynamite combination. What a wonderful discussion. Thank you all. And we can carry all of this conversation into our future years of watching this movie, probably forever. And we look forward to seeing you next time on KenCast.